Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Words, just words, they say, but anyone who has lived through the storm of a verbally abusive relationship knows the truth. Words can become invisible weapons, cutting deeper than a blade, echoing long after they're spoken, and reshaping how we see ourselves. It doesn't start with screaming. It doesn't begin with insults. In fact, in the beginning, it may feel like love, attention, even protection. You might feel cherished one moment and confused the next, slowly, almost imperceptibly. The foundation of your self-worth begins to erode. Your confidence dims. You second-guess your memory, your judgment, your value. You begin to wonder if the problem is you, but it isn't. And that is the soul-shaking, liberating realization this book offers. This is not just a guide. It's a lifeline. Patricia Evans hands you a flashlight to see through the fog of manipulation and emotional entanglement. She names the pain you couldn't quite describe. She validates the feelings you've been made to question. She empowers you to reclaim your voice, your worth, and your boundaries. Every page is a wake-up call, a revelation that what you've been enduring has a name, and most importantly, a way out. Whether you are quietly suffering, starting to question what's normal, or already on the path to healing, this book will meet you where you are and gently walk you toward the truth, because you are not crazy, you are not overly sensitive, you are not alone, and most of all, you deserve to be spoken to with respect, always. Part 1. Understanding the Hidden Wounds. Chapter 1. The Invisible War Zone. Patricia Evans opens the book by dropping a bombshell. Verbal abuse is often so covert, the person experiencing it may not even know it's happening. Unlike physical abuse, verbal abuse doesn't leave bruises, it leaves doubt, confusion, shame, and self-doubt. The abuser may dismiss their partner's thoughts, twist their words, mock their feelings, or treat them like they're crazy, all while denying they're doing anything wrong. Evans points out a chilling fact. Most victims of verbal abuse only realize something is wrong when they start losing their own identity. They feel anxious, depressed, and disconnected from their sense of reality. But instead of blaming the abuser, they blame themselves. If you've ever felt like you were too sensitive or were told you're imagining things, this chapter will feel like a mirror. Chapter 2. 15 Types of Verbal Abuse. This chapter is the heart of naming the behavior. Evans outlines 15 distinct forms of verbal abuse, and let me tell you, this is where the light bulbs start going off, from withholding, refusing to engage or share thoughts and feelings, to countering, constantly arguing or resisting your point of view, to discounting, making you feel like your experience doesn't matter. Evans gives us language for things that are too often dismissed as normal relationship problems. Some others include blocking and diverting, changing the subject, preventing resolution, accusing and blaming, making the partner feel at fault all the time, judging and criticizing, undermining a person's worth in subtle ways, trivializing, making what matters to you seem unimportant. Ask yourself, do I feel safe expressing myself around this person, or do I constantly filter, shrink, or second-guess what I say? Chapter 3. Why it's so hard to see. Evans explores a heartbreaking paradox. People in verbally abusive relationships often doubt themselves instead of the abuser because the abuse is inconsistent. One moment they're loving, the next moment they're cold or cruel. That back and forth creates cognitive dissonance, a psychological state where you're torn between conflicting realities. The abuser may even call their partner crazy, irrational, or oversensitive. Over time, this undermines confidence and reality itself. Victims begin to question whether the abuse is real. Patricia Evans uses this powerful metaphor. Verbal abuse is like being slowly poisoned. You can't see it happening, but it affects everything: your energy, your emotions, your ability to trust yourself. Have you ever made excuses for someone who consistently made you feel bad? This chapter reminds us, if someone makes you feel small, that's not love, it's control. Chapter 4. The Myth of the Perfect Partner. One of the most eye-opening insights in this chapter is how many victims of verbal abuse fall for the illusion of who they thought their partner was, or could be. Abusive individuals often start relationships with intense charm. They can be charismatic, passionate, attentive, sometimes even too much, too soon. But once the victim is emotionally invested, The abuse begins slowly, strategically. Evans explains that victims often cling to the hope that the old partner will come back. They rationalize bad behavior, blaming stress, bad moods, or even themselves, but here's the truth. The abuse isn't a phase, it's a pattern. Key quote to highlight. The man who abuses sees himself as superior and entitled. He believes it is his right to define his partner's reality. This chapter challenges readers to let go of the fantasy and start looking at the relationship as it is, not as we wish it could be. Part 2. Inside the Mind of the Abuser. Chapter 5. The Two Realities. Patricia Evans introduces a concept that turns everything on its head. Abuser and partner live in two different realities. In the partner's reality, the relationship is meant to be equal, mutual, and respectful. In the abuser's reality, the partner exists to serve them, to agree, to validate, to never challenge. This is key. The abuser is not just trying to hurt their partner. They're trying to control how the partner thinks, feels, and sees the world. If you challenge that worldview, you're seen as disloyal or the enemy. Evans explains that the abusive person often sees themselves as the center of truth. What they believe is always right. Anyone who contradicts them is either wrong, foolish, or threatening. They treat disagreement as betrayal. Ever had someone twist your words, deny your reality, or get angry when you simply saw things differently? That's the clash of two realities, and it's a core tactic of verbal abuse. Chapter 6. The Abuser's Core Belief. This chapter takes us deeper into the psychology. Evans argues that verbal abusers often have an unconscious belief in their own superiority. They may not say it out loud, but inside they believe, I must be right, I must be in control, my way is the only way. This belief system fuels behaviors like interrupting, correcting, belittling your ideas, mocking your interests, undermining your emotions. It's not about facts. It's about power. If they feel you're gaining confidence or disagreeing too much, they see that as a threat, so they do what they do best, tear you down just enough to maintain control. Evans emphasizes, this belief in control is not love, it's domination, and that can't coexist with a healthy relationship. If someone needs to feel superior to feel okay, what does that say about their inner world? Chapter 7. Who is the abuser, really? This chapter gets into the deeper wounds hiding underneath the abuser's mask. Patricia Evans points out that many abusers struggle with low self-worth, fear of vulnerability, a deep need to control others to feel safe. They may have grown up in homes where domination was modeled, where they learned that the only way to survive or feel powerful was to control others. But here's the twist. They often don't see themselves as abusive. They may see themselves as strong, logical, or even helping their partner become better. This illusion keeps them from taking responsibility because in their eyes, they're the one being wronged when their partner stands up to them. Ever had someone lash out, then make you feel like the villain for reacting? That's the abuser's worldview at work. Chapter 8. Why the Cycle Keeps Spinning. Here, Evans explains why so many people get stuck in these relationships. Even when they know something is wrong, the abuse happens in cycles. 1. Tension builds. You feel uneasy but can't pinpoint why. 2. An incident occurs, a comment, a fight, a shutdown. 3. Denial or minimization. The abuser says it didn't happen or that it wasn't a big deal. 4. Honeymoon phase. The abuser becomes sweet again, maybe even apologetic, and so the victim thinks, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it will get better. But Evans is clear. Without intervention or change, it doesn't get better. The cycle just repeats, usually with longer periods of tension and shorter periods of relief. Verbal abuse doesn't fade with love. It fades with clarity, boundaries, and action. Part 3. Finding Your Voice. How to Respond to Verbal Abuse. Chapter 9. The Power of Naming the Abuse. Let's start with the truth bomb. Verbal abuse thrives in confusion. It feeds on the fog, on your silence, your second-guessing, your shrinking. Evans says the first and most powerful thing you can do is name what's happening out loud. Why is this so powerful? Because the moment you say, that's abusive, that felt like you were trying to control me, please don't talk to me like that, you disrupt the dynamic. You stop playing by the unspoken rules. You start creating clarity, not just for them, but for yourself. Evans doesn't say you have to scream, argue, or convince. In fact, less is more. Calm, clear statements like, "That's a put down, I won't accept that. That's not true, I won't be spoken to that way," are far more effective than emotional pleading or defense. What's one abusive phrase you've heard too many times? And what would it feel like to call it out for what it is? Chapter 10. Breaking the loop. Don't explain, argue, or defend. One of the most powerful tools Evans gives us is what she calls the don't jade method. Don't justify, argue, defend, or explain, because when you justify, you invite the abuser to dismantle your reasons. When you argue, you enter their arena of control. When you defend, you validate their accusation. When you explain, you give them material to twist instead. Evans teaches us to use boundaries without engagement that might sound like, "I see this isn't a respectful conversation, so I'm stepping away," or "I don't agree and I'm not going to argue about it." It might feel cold at first, especially if you're used to defending your every move, but remember, you don't owe anyone access to your peace. Practical tip: write down a few non-negotiable statements you can use, rehearse them, memorize them. These become your shield. Chapter 11. Rebuilding your inner world. Here's where it gets emotional. In a healing way, Evans turns the spotlight back on you. Your intuition, your inner wisdom, your ability to know what's right for you. She talks about how living in a verbally abusive relationship often results in a distorted self-image, hypervigilance, constantly walking on eggshells, guilt for having needs or boundaries. But the truth is, you are not broken, you are bruised. Not broken. One of the key exercises in this chapter is to journal your truth. Ask yourself, what do I feel? What do I know is true? Even if it's denied by someone else, what do I need? This might seem small, but this practice is how you relearn to trust yourself. Evans writes, you can reclaim your reality. You can hold on to your truth without needing someone else to agree with it. Try a journaling prompt tonight. If I weren't afraid of their reaction, what would I say or do? Chapter 12. Setting boundaries, the real kind. Let's get practical. What do actual boundaries look like in a verbally abusive relationship? Evans says a real boundary is clear, firm, enforceable. For example, if you raise your voice at me, I will leave the room, or if you belittle me in front of others, I will walk away and not re-engage. But here's the hard truth. You must be ready to follow through. A boundary without action becomes just another empty warning, and abusive people pick up on that fast. Evans encourages readers to set consequences you are prepared to act on, and to start small if needed. Remember, you are not trying to control the abuser, you are controlling your response. Choose one behavior you will no longer tolerate, decide what your response will be, practice it, hold the line. Chapter 13. When they deny or escalate. Let's be real, most abusers don't like being called out. So what happens when they deny the abuse or double down? Evans prepares us for this. She says, expect denial. I never said that. You're overreacting. Expect minimization. It wasn't that bad. You're so sensitive. Expect blame reversal. You made me do it. But she reminds us, their reaction is not your responsibility. Your only job is to hold on to your truth. If they escalate, Evans recommends de-escalation by disengaging, removing yourself from the interaction calmly but firmly. You are not there to change them, you are there to protect yourself. If someone gets angry when you create healthy distance, that's a sign your boundaries are working. Keep going. Part 4. Healing and Freedom, Life After Verbal Abuse. Chapter 14. Self-Talk and Rewiring Your Inner Voice. Patricia Evans starts by shining a light on the most persistent scar of verbal abuse: internalized self-doubt. When someone has told you for years that you're crazy, too sensitive, lazy, dramatic, selfish, you start to believe it. Their voice becomes the one in your head, but Evans teaches us how to transform that voice into one of healing. She introduces the practice of affirming truth-based self-talk. Examples of healthy affirmations: I have the right to my thoughts and feelings. My needs matter. I am not responsible for someone else's abusive behavior. This isn't toxic positivity, it's truth-telling, and truth is the antidote to abuse. Takeaway: what is one false belief you've carried because of someone's verbal abuse? And what's the truth that will replace it? Chapter 15. speaking up, and staying grounded. Evans emphasizes the importance of consistently speaking your truth. Even after the storm, she encourages readers to refuse to accept distorted views of themselves, speak clearly and directly without apologizing for existing, avoid being pulled into old dynamics. It might feel foreign at first. After all, you may have been trained, subtly or overtly, to avoid rocking the boat. But every time you speak up for yourself with calm clarity, you retrain your nervous system. You show your brain and your spirit that your voice is safe, strong, and needed. Practical moment. Practice saying something small but clear today. Actually, I disagree. Or, I need time to think. Watch how it feels. Chapter 16. Emotional Recovery. You are not broken. One of the most powerful truths Evans shares is this. Your reactions to abuse, like confusion, sadness, anger, or self-doubt, are normal reactions to an abnormal situation. You are not overly sensitive. You are not weak. You are not crazy. You're human. Evans gently guides survivors to stop blaming themselves for staying too long, missing the signs, hoping they could fix things. Grief is part of recovery. You might grieve who you were before, the time you lost, the love you thought was real, but that grief is healing. It's sacred. It means you're returning to yourself. Emotional check-in. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to feel without judgment? Beyond the book. A new way to live. Patricia Evans closes the book with a vision of what's possible. Healthy relationships where mutual respect is the baseline, a sense of agency, where you choose rather than react, a deep, unshakable belief in your right to be safe, seen, and heard. She reminds us, it's not just about escaping abuse, it's about discovering who you truly are when you're no longer being controlled. That version of you, they're still there, waiting. And you don't need permission from anyone to rise. Read the book to learn more. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz reviews and summaries.